Everything you know about Vader is wrong. The mechanical breathing, the cybernetic limbs, the life support systems. None of it happened. One split-second decision on Mustafar changed everything, and the galaxy paid a price far worse than anyone could imagine. Don't try it, Anakin, but this time, he doesn't jump. This time, Anakin Skywalker makes a choice that creates the most terrifyingly perfect Sith Lord the galaxy has ever seen. No weaknesses, no limitations, no mercy. And 20 years later, when his own children look at their father's unmarked face, they see something more horrifying than any mechanical monster. A man who convinced himself that genocide was love. So, lava flows of Mustafar burn beneath them as Obi-Wan stands on the high ground, watching his former apprentice with desperate eyes. Anakin circles below, his yellow eyes calculating, his body whole and deadly. The moment that should have broken him is about to make him unstoppable. The heat is unbearable, waves of it rising from the molten rivers that carve through Mustafar's hellish landscape. Every breath tastes of sulfur and death, but neither warrior falters. They have been fighting for what feels like hours, their blades weaving patterns of light against the darkness. This is more than a duel. It's the culmination of everything that went wrong, every choice that led them to this moment of ultimate betrayal. "You were my brother, Anakin," Obi-Wan calls out, his voice heavy with grief that cuts through the roar of the lava. "I loved you like a son. How could you fall so far?" Anakin's response is a snarl of pure rage as he leaps forward, his crimson blade seeking his former master's heart. "You never understood. None of you understood. The Jedi are weak, clinging to their outdated code while the galaxy burns around them. Their sabers lock, pressing against each other with such force that the metal platform beneath them begins to buckle." Obi-Wan can feel the heat of Anakin's hatred, the raw power of the dark side flowing through every movement. This isn't the Padawan he trained, the young man who once brought him blue milk and asked endless questions about the Force. This is something else, something twisted and broken, yet terrifyingly whole. "The younglings, Anakin," Obi-Wan says, his voice barely a whisper. "How could you kill children? How could you destroy everything we built together?" For just a moment, something flickers in those yellow eyes, a ghost of the boy who once dreamed of freeing all the slaves in the galaxy. But it's gone as quickly as it came, replaced by cold justification that chills Obi-Wan more than any Sith. Lightning. They would have grown up to be Jedi. They would have perpetuated the cycle of failure that nearly destroyed the Republic. "I did what had to be done to save the galaxy from your kind." The words hit Obi-Wan like physical blows. He staggers back, his guard dropping for just an instant, and Anakin presses his advantage. The younger man's blade work is perfect, each strike calculated and precise. He has always been the better swordsman, and without the restraints of Jedi philosophy holding him back, he's become something truly terrifying to behold. But Obi-Wan has advantages too. Years of experience, mastery of the defensive forms, and most importantly, the high ground. He retreats up the sloping platform, drawing Anakin after him like a crate dragon following bait. The position gives him leverage, allows him to deflect the younger man's increasingly desperate attacks while conserving his own energy. "You underestimate my power," Anakin shouts, his voice echoing off the facility walls like thunder. "Don't try it, Anakin," Obi-Wan pleads, seeing his former Padawan preparing for the leap that will decide everything. "I have the high ground," but this time Anakin doesn't jump. This time he stops at the edge of the platform, his yellow eyes calculating behind their veil of hatred. The dark side has made him powerful, yes, but it has also made him cunning. He can see the trap Obi-Wan is laying, the way his master expects him to repeat the same reckless mistakes that cost him limbs in his duel with Count Dooku years ago. Instead, Anakin reaches out with the Force, not to enhance his own leap, but to target the very foundation of Obi-Wan's strategic position. The rocky outcrop that gives the Jedi Master his tactical advantage begins to crack and crumble under the focused assault of telekinetic power. Chunks of stone and twisted metal rain down into the lava below as the platform starts to collapse in a cascade of destruction. Obi-Wan's eyes widen in shock and something that might be pride. Even in his fall to darkness, Anakin remains brilliant, adaptive, always thinking 3 moves ahead of his opponents. The Jedi Master tries to leap to safety, using the Force to guide his trajectory toward another stable platform. But the desperate effort leaves him exposed and off balance in the superheated air. Anakin is waiting for him, positioned perfectly, to intercept his master's escape route. The crimson blade cuts through the superheated atmosphere with a sound like thunder, finding its mark across Obi-Wan's chest with surgical precision. The Jedi Master cries out, his own lightsaber spinning, away into the molten rock as he crashes onto a narrow ledge barely above the lava line. His robes are singed and smoking, his breathing labored and pained, while blood seeps through the cauterized wound that crosses his torso. Anakin lands gracefully beside his fallen master, his blade humming mere inches from Obi-Wan's throat. For a moment, time seems frozen in this hellish tableau. The only sounds are the bubble and hiss of lava and Obi-Wan's ragged, painful breathing. Anakin's face remains unmarked by the volcanic heat, his body whole and undamaged by their confrontation. He has won completely, decisively, without sacrifice. "I should kill you," Anakin says, his voice cold as the vacuum of space. "You tried to turn Padme against me. You came here to murder me on the word of a politician who's been manipulating us all." Obi-Wan looks up at his former apprentice, seeing not the twisted machinery of some dark future, but the unmarked face of the boy he raised from childhood. Somehow this makes it worse. There's no hiding behind a mask, no breathing apparatus to muffle the humanity that still lurks beneath the surface. "I came here to save you," Obi-Wan whispers, each word costing him precious breath. "I still believe there's good in you, Anakin. I can feel it even now." "Then you're a fool, and your feelings have made you weak." Anakin deactivates his lightsaber, but doesn't offer mercy or a clean death. Instead, he simply turns away, dismissing his former master like a broken tool. "Goodbye, Obi-Wan. Try not to die too slowly in this heat." The last words Obi-Wan hears as consciousness begins to fade are Anakin's footsteps, quick and sure, racing back toward his ship with desperate urgency. There's something in that sound that speaks of priorities more important than finishing off old enemies. Someone who matters more than revenge or closure. Padme. The medical facility on Polis Massa has become a scene of barely controlled chaos, its sterile corridors filled with the sounds of urgent activity. Medical droids glide between monitoring stations with mechanical efficiency, while the few organic staff members struggle to understand what's happening to Senator Amidala. Her vital signs are failing for no discernible medical reason, as if the very life force itself is being systematically drained from her body by some invisible parasite. "We're losing her," one of the medical droids announces in its flat, emotionless voice, optical sensors flickering as they process data streams, heart rate dropping to critical levels, neural activity diminishing rapidly. Cause remains unknown and untreatable. Bail Organa paces the corridor outside the treatment room, his distinguished face drawn with worry and exhaustion that speaks of sleepless nights. The senator from Alderaan has seen much in his long years of public service, witnessed the rise and fall of governments, but nothing has prepared him for the events of the last few days. The fall of the Republic. The shocking revelation that Chancellor Palpatine was a Sith Lord all along, the horrifying transformation of young Anakin Skywalker into something dark and terrible. It's too much for any rational mind to fully process or accept. Through the transparent steel windows of the medical bay, he can see Padmé's still form on the treatment table. Her swollen belly a stark reminder that 2 innocent lives hang in the balance of whatever mysterious ailment is consuming their mother. The twins she carries are strong and healthy. The medical droids report with their characteristic precision, but without their mother to sustain them. A sound like controlled thunder echoes through the asteroid mining facility as something substantial lands in the main hangar bay. Emergency alarms begin to wail throughout the complex, and security personnel rush toward the source of the disturbance with weapons drawn. But Bail already knows what they'll find there, already understands who has the skill and the desperate motivation to track them across the galaxy to this remote location. Anakin Skywalker strides through the corridors of the medical facility like an avatar of barely contained destruction, his black robes billowing behind him like the wings of some predatory bird. Clone troopers try to bar his way, their training and equipment useless against this level of power. He doesn't kill them. He doesn't need to waste the time or energy. A simple gesture of his hand sends them flying like toys, their armor clattering against the walls as they fall unconscious or flee in terror. The medical staff scatters before his advance like leaves before a hurricane. Their programmed protocols and emergency procedures no match for the raw terror radiating from this figure in black. Only the medical droids remain at their posts, their mechanical minds unable to process concepts like fear or self-preservation as they continue their futile attempts to save their dying patient. "Step away from her," Anakin commands as he enters the treatment room, his voice carrying the absolute authority of someone accustomed to instant obedience. The lead medical droid turns toward him, its optical sensors whirring and clicking as they attempt to focus on this new variable. "Sir, the patient is in critical condition. Any interruption to current treatment protocols could result in immediate cardiac arrest and..." The droid's clinical explanation is cut short as Anakin crushes its vocabulator with a casual thought. The machine staggers backward on unsteady legs, servos sparking and failing as its companions retreat to the relative safety of the walls. They've been programmed above all else to preserve life. But even their deepest subroutines include self-preservation protocols when faced with this magnitude of threat. Anakin approaches the medical table where Padmé lies unconscious, her face pale and peaceful despite the crisis consuming her body from within. His hands hover over her still form, and for just a moment, the carefully constructed mask of Sith confidence slips away. Beneath it is the frightened young man who lost his mother to Tusken Raiders, who swore on her grave that he would never again be too weak to save someone he loved. "I won't let you die," he whispers, his voice breaking with an emotion that has no place in Sith philosophy. "I won't let anyone else die because I'm too weak, too bound by rules and codes to do what's necessary." He closes his eyes and reaches deeper into the Force than he has ever dared to go before, deeper than any Jedi teaching would have allowed or encouraged. The power that flows through his unmarked limbs is intoxicating in its purity. Unlimited, unrestrained by concerns about balance or the corrupting influence of the dark side. This is what Sith mastery truly offers. The strength to impose your will upon the universe itself, to bend the very fabric of reality through sheer force of determination and desire. Dark energy pours from his fingertips into Padmé's failing body, fighting against the mysterious ailment that threatens to steal her away from him forever. He can sense it now, the shadow that has wrapped itself around her heart like a parasitic vine, feeding on her life force with systematic efficiency. It reeks of Sith sorcery, of his master's hidden manipulations and long-term planning. Palpatine has been orchestrating this crisis from the very beginning, using Padmé's impending death as the final emotional push needed to drive his new apprentice completely into the welcoming embrace of darkness. But Anakin is no longer the broken, desperate boy who knelt before the Chancellor's desk and accepted whatever scraps of forbidden knowledge were offered. The power surging through his complete undamaged body is unprecedented, pure force energy channeled without the interference of mechanical replacements or cybernetic limitations. He grasps the shadow with invisible telekinetic fingers and tears it away from Padme's essence, casting the Sith poison into oblivion with a sound like breaking crystal. Her eyes flutter open slowly, brown and beautiful and gloriously alive. She looks up at him with confusion and growing concern, taking in his changed appearance. The yellow tinge that now colors his eyes, the harder set of his once gentle features, the way raw power seems to radiate from his very being like heat from a forge. "Anakin," she whispers, her voice barely audible in the sudden quiet. What have you done? What's happened to you?" The question cuts deeper than any lightsaber wound ever could, but he forces himself to smile down at her, with something approximating his old warmth. "What I had to do, my love. What the Jedi could never bring themselves to do. I saved you, Padme. You're going to live, and our children are going to have their mother." Behind them, the medical droids emerge from their protective positions to announce the successful delivery of the twins. Luke, with his naturally contemplative disposition, often questions the philosophical foundations underlying their daily exercises. "But what about compassion, Father? What about helping people who lack the strength to help themselves? Isn't that what true strength should be used for?" "Compassion without power to back it up is nothing more than empty sentiment," Vader replies, patiently adjusting his son's grip on the training lightsaber with hands that have never known mechanical replacement. "I tried to help people when I was young and idealistic, tried to free slaves and protect the innocent from exploitation. But I was weak then, bound by Jedi teachings that valued emotional satisfaction over practical results. Now I possess the actual power to make meaningful differences in people's lives. By making everyone afraid of you?" The challenging question comes from Leia, whose sharp analytical mind has already begun to grasp the true nature of imperial governance. She observes how people react when Vader enters any room, notices the way conversations stop abruptly, and eyes turn away in fear. Terror has become the Empire's most valuable currency, and her father serves as its most effective collector and distributor. By eliminating the fundamental sources of chaos and systematic suffering, Vader corrects with the patience of someone who has considered these questions extensively. The Republic allowed criminals and corruption to flourish because they were too morally weak to make the necessary hard choices. We don't have that luxury of ethical purity. When you assume leadership roles someday, you'll understand the weight of such responsibilities. Padme watches these philosophical exchanges from the training room's observation area, her heart breaking incrementally with each passing day. She witnesses the darkness slowly taking root in her precious children, watches them absorb their father's worldview like desert plants growing toward a poisonous sun. She tries desperately to counter his teachings with stories of hope, redemption, and the power of peaceful resistance. But his overwhelming presence and unshakable confidence make her efforts seem futile. "Tell us about the time before," Luke requests one evening as she helps him prepare for sleep. "Tell us about when Father was a Jedi Knight." The innocent question catches her completely off guard, partly because she's surprised he even knows that loaded term. Vader never speaks of his past, never acknowledges the man he used to be or the beliefs he once held sacred. For him, Anakin Skywalker died permanently in the lava flows of Mustafar, and only Lord Vader emerged from those purifying flames. "Your father was the kindest, most courageously compassionate person I had ever encountered," she says, carefully, acutely aware that Imperial surveillance systems might be monitoring even this private moment. He wanted desperately to help everyone he met, to make the entire galaxy a better, safer place for ordinary people like us. "But he does make it better now," Leia interjects from her own bed, her voice carrying conviction beyond her years. He stops dangerous people from hurting innocent civilians. He ensures there are no more destructive wars like the ones you've told us about. Yes, sweetheart, but there are many different ways to stop dangerous people. Some methods create new problems, generate new forms of suffering that can be worse than what they replaced. Mother, Luke says with the serious expression that sometimes makes him appear far older than his actual age. Do you believe people can fundamentally change their nature? If someone becomes something terrible, can they become good again through choice and effort? The profound question hangs in the recycled air like a lightsaber blade, cutting straight to the heart of everything Padme has been wondering and hoping for over the past decade. She studies her son's face, seeing so much of his father's youthful features, and recognizes the same dangerous capacity for both transcendent light and absolute darkness. I believe they can transform themselves, she says finally, choosing each word with infinite care. But they have to genuinely want to change, and sometimes they need help remembering who they used to be before they lost their way. That man died permanently on Mustafar, he states without turning around. What emerged from that crucible was something stronger, something finally capable of protecting what truly matters in this universe. What truly matters, or what you've arbitrarily decided matters according to your current perspective. Is there a meaningful difference between those concepts? Now he does face her directly, and she glimpses a fleeting moment of vulnerability beneath the Sith certainty. I saved your life, Padme. I saved our children from becoming orphans. I brought genuine peace to a galaxy that was systematically tearing itself apart through endless warfare. If accomplishing those goals required becoming something you find difficult to recognize, then it was a price worth paying without hesitation. But what if I find it impossible to love what you've chosen to become? The desperate words escape her lips before she can reconsider their wisdom, hanging in the climate-controlled air like a death sentence pronounced upon everything they once shared. Vader's unmarked face goes completely still, and for a terrifying moment she thinks she's pushed too far, challenged the one remaining thing that still anchors him to his humanity. The statement functions as both a declaration of eternal love and a promise of permanent imprisonment, and Padme realizes with growing horror that in saving her life, her husband has also transformed her into a trophy in his collection, along with their children and the galaxy itself. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of that vast galaxy, an aging hermit maintains his solitary vigil on the desert world of Tatooine. Obi-Wan Kenobi survived the volcanic hell of Mustafar, but the victory came at enormous cost. The wound Anakin inflicted left permanent internal damage, and he moves with the careful deliberation of someone who intimately understands his own physical limitations. The twin suns beat down mercilessly on Tatooine's endless dunes, and sometimes he wonders if dying on that lava-covered planet would have been a more merciful fate. But he endures his exile because someone must bear witness to what came before. Someone must remember what galactic civilization was like before the Empire's rise, before the systematic purges, before hope died in the space between one heartbeat and the next. He monitors Imperial communication networks when possible, following the reports of Jedi deaths that continue to filter in from across the known systems. Each familiar name represents another nail hammered into the coffin of everything he once believed in and fought to preserve. Ben, Owen Lars calls across the moisture farm, his weathered face carrying the grim news that arrives too regularly these days. Got word from Anchorhead. Another Jedi's been discovered and eliminated, some Nautolan master on Glee Anselm. They say Lord Vader handled the situation personally, as usual. Obi-Wan nods slowly, adding Kit Fisto to the growing mental list of fallen comrades. The amphibious Jedi had always been one of the most genuinely optimistic members of the Council, someone who maintained hope even during the war's darkest periods. His death represents more than just another tactical victory for the Empire. It symbolizes the systematic erasure of light from an increasingly dark galaxy. "How many survivors are left now?" Owen asks, though they both suspect they know the approximate answer. "Perhaps half a dozen scattered across the Outer Rim territories, hiding in places they believe he cannot reach." Obi-Wan's hand moves unconsciously to the permanent scar across his chest, that constant reminder of his failure in the volcanic caverns. But he'll locate them eventually, just as he's found all the others. He always does, and his methods grow more efficient with each hunt. So what do we do? Simply wait here until he inevitably comes for us as well? "We prepare ourselves and maintain hope," Obi-Wan replies with quiet determination, his gaze turning toward the distant palace that dominates Coruscant's skyline, somehow visible through the Force across impossible interstellar distances. Somewhere within that fortress, Anakin's children are growing to adulthood. And if I know Padme's character, she's not allowing them to mature without understanding that alternative paths exist. "You really believe they might eventually turn against their own father?" "I believe," Obi-Wan says with careful precision, "that the light side of the Force has a way of finding cracks in even the most comprehensively constructed darkness. And sometimes, those hairline cracks prove wide enough for genuine hope to take root and flourish." Back on Coruscant, that hope manifests in an unexpected form as Leia approaches her 18th birthday. The princess has begun conducting her own investigation into Imperial governance, using her privileged access to data networks to uncover information that troubles her increasingly sophisticated moral sensibilities. Her brilliant analytical mind, unrestrained by her father's philosophical limitations, has been systematically examining the Empire's methods and their long-term consequences. Late one night, she discovers archived records from her mother's time as Queen of Naboo and later as a Republic senator. She learns about the democratic principles that once guided galactic civilization, about the Clone Wars that tore the Republic apart, and most importantly, about the Jedi who died trying to preserve those endangered ideals. The contrast between that idealistic past and the authoritarian present becomes impossible to ignore. Hours pass as she delves deeper into the forbidden history, her brilliant mind processing information that has been systematically purged from official Imperial records. She discovers transcripts of Senate debates where her mother argued passionately for refugee rights, for peaceful solutions to interplanetary conflicts, for the preservation of cultural diversity across the galaxy. She finds recordings of Jedi Council meetings, seeing masters like Yoda and Mace Windu wrestling with impossible decisions during the war's darkest hours. But it's the personal files that affect her most deeply. Private communications between her parents during their secret courtship, messages filled with hope and dreams for a better future. In these intimate documents, she sees a version of her father she's never known, a man who spoke of freeing slaves and protecting the innocent, who worried about using violence even in the service of justice. The Republic wasn't perfect, she murmurs to herself as she reviews testimony from corruption hearings, but at least people had choices. At least they could speak out against injustice without disappearing in the night. Her research leads her to classified reports about the Jedi Purge, detailed accounts of her father's systematic hunting of the survivors. She reads about masters who died trying to protect refugee children, about Padawans who were executed for the crime of existing. Each name on the death lists represents not just a casualty of war, but the deliberate erasure of an entire way of life. When she finally confronts her father in his private meditation chamber, her preparation shows in every word. "You systematically murdered children," she states with prosecutorial precision, her voice steady despite the magnitude of her accusation. "Younglings who were barely older than Luke and I are now. Barriss Offee was 14 when you killed her. Caleb Doom was 12. Vader doesn't attempt to deny the specific charges or minimize their implications. His unmarked face displays no shame, no regret, only the cold certainty that has guided his actions for 2 decades. I eliminated future sources of chaos and systematic rebellion. The Jedi younglings would have grown into adults who perpetuated the same failed philosophy that nearly destroyed galactic civilization. They were innocent children who had committed no crimes. Barriss was trying to expose corruption in the war effort. Caleb was just a student, learning to use his abilities to help people. They represented clear and present dangers to the stability I was working to establish. Their force sensitivity would have made them weapons in the hands of anyone seeking to destabilize the peace we've achieved. But Leia has done her research too thoroughly to be deflected by generalities. What about the civilian casualties, the families of Jedi who were killed just for being related to Force users? What about entire worlds that were bombarded into submission because they protested Imperial policies? For the first time, Vader's composure shows a crack. Those were necessary sacrifices to prevent greater suffering. Sometimes a surgeon must cut away healthy tissue to stop the spread of disease. And who appointed you the galaxy's surgeon? Who gave you the right to decide which civilizations live and which die? The question hangs between them like a drawn blade, and Leia sees something flicker in her father's yellow eyes. Not anger or defensiveness, but something that might be genuine uncertainty. "The Force did," he says finally, but his voice lacks its usual conviction. "The prophecy spoke of bringing balance, of ending the conflict between light and dark. I have done that. By destroying one side completely. That's not balance, Father. That's just victory through genocide." Leia stares at her father with a mixture of horror and dawning comprehension, finally seeing him with complete clarity for perhaps the first time. This isn't the mechanical monster of popular legend, but something infinitely more disturbing. A rational, intelligent man who has convinced himself that his atrocities were acts of love and protection. "Mother was right about what happened to you," she says with growing conviction. "You did die on Mustafar. The man she married was consumed by those flames, and something else took his place wearing his face. That evening, as Coruscant's artificial lights create their eternal false dawn, Padme discovers her husband standing alone on their private balcony. The sight has become disturbingly familiar over the years. Anakin silhouetted against the endless city, wrestling with thoughts he never shares. For a moment, observing his profile against the urban glow, she sees an echo of the young Jedi she fell in love with all those years ago. The years have not been kind to their relationship, despite his success in saving her life. She survived. Childbirth, yes, but at what cost? The man who rescued her from death has become someone she barely recognizes, someone whose very presence fills her with a complex mixture of love, fear, and profound sadness. "They're beginning to see me as a monster," Vader says quietly without turning around, his voice carrying a weight of unexpected vulnerability that she hasn't heard in years. "Our children look at me and see someone to be feared and obeyed rather than respected and loved." "You're not a monster, Anakin," Padme replies, moving to stand beside him at the railing. "You're a man who made terrible choices for what seemed like good reasons at the time. But the road to hell, as they say, is paved with good intentions." He turns to study her face in the artificial twilight, and she's struck once again by how completely unchanged his features remain. No mechanical scars mar his skin, no breathing apparatus obscures his expressions, just the face she fell in love with on Naboo, hardened by decades of wielding absolute power over billions of lives. "I saved you, Padme. I saved our children from becoming orphans like I was. I brought lasting peace to a galaxy that was systematically destroying itself through endless warfare and political chaos. Why isn't that sufficient to earn their understanding, if not their gratitude? Because peace without freedom isn't actually peace at all, my love. It's just organized oppression with more efficient public relations. The Republic offered people freedom, democracy, self-determination. He counters with the weariness of someone who has had this argument many times before. And look what they accomplished with those precious gifts. They started a galactic war that nearly obliterated everything civilized, allowed corruption to flourish in every government institution, permitted a Sith Lord to rise to the highest position of power under their collective noses. At least now, there's genuine stability for our family and billions of others. Stability that depends entirely on your personal ability to maintain control through violence and systematic intimidation. What happens when you're gone, Anakin? What occurs when Luke and Leia inherit this empire you've constructed? Will they possess the ruthlessness to hold it together through force? Or will they have the wisdom to transform it into something that doesn't require constant oppression? The question strikes at his deepest, most carefully buried fears with surgical precision. What if his entire approach has been fundamentally misguided from the beginning? What if the peace he's imposed through superior firepower and systematic elimination of opposition is merely a temporary condition that will collapse the moment his iron grip loosens? What if his children examine his blood-soaked legacy and conclude that he built nothing but a monument to his own trauma and fear? Such thoughts are dangerous territory for someone who has committed himself so completely to the dark side's philosophy, and he pushes them away before they can take root and spread like a cancer through his certainties. But the doubts have been planted, and they grow stronger with each passing day. The turning point in their family's increasingly strained dynamics arrives when Luke, now 16 and beginning to question everything he's been taught, secretly establishes communication with surviving rebel sympathizers scattered across the Outer Rim. Not to join their ultimately futile cause necessarily, but to understand why people would choose death over life under his father's version of galactic peace. The rebels he contacts are not the organized rebellion of another timeline, but scattered cells of survivors, refugees, and idealists who refuse to accept the new order. They tell him stories his imperial education never covered, tales of worlds bombed into submission for refusing to surrender their cultural artifacts, of families separated because one member was suspected of Jedi sympathies, of entire species driven to near extinction because they possessed force-sensitive populations. "Your father is not the man the propaganda makes him out to be," one grizzled former Republic senator tells him during a clandestine holocall. "He's not some wise protector bringing order to chaos. He's a traumatized war veteran who decided that his personal vision of safety was worth any price in blood. But he ended the Clone Wars," Luke argues, still defending the only worldview he's ever known. "He brought peace to the galaxy after decades of conflict. He ended one war by starting another," the senator replies sadly. "The war against hope, against choice, against the fundamental right of sentient beings to determine their own destiny. That's not peace, young Skywalker, that's just efficient tyranny." When Vader discovers this clandestine communication through the Imperial surveillance network that monitors even his own family, the rage that erupts threatens to consume everything around him. His yellow eyes blaze with fury as he confronts his son in the palace's main training room, lightsaber already ignited and humming with deadly intent. "You would betray everything I've sacrificed to keep you safe?" he demands, his voice carrying a weight of wounded betrayal that surprises both of them. "You would throw away everything I've built, everything I've endured to protect our family?" "I'm trying to understand why people would rather die than live under your version of peace." Luke responds with courage that surprises everyone, including himself. His own lightsaber springs to life, its blue blade contrasting starkly with his father's crimson weapon. What kind of peace requires constant surveillance and systematic oppression to maintain itself? Father and son face each other across the training room's polished floor, lightsabers ignited and bodies tense for combat. But this confrontation differs fundamentally from the throne room scene of another timeline. This Vader operates at full physical capacity, unencumbered by mechanical limitations or the need for life support systems. He is more dangerous than he has ever been. A perfect fusion of organic flexibility and force-enhanced power. Luke barely manages to hold his own as his father's attacks demonstrate decades of refinement. Each strike is precisely calculated, each movement flowing seamlessly into the next. Where the cyborg Vader of another timeline might have relied on brute strength and intimidation, this complete version demonstrates the fluid grace that made Anakin Skywalker legendary during the Clone Wars. "You possess incredible power, Luke," Vader calls out between strikes, his blade work never faltering, even as he attempts to convince his son. "You could rule beside me, help me maintain the order that keeps billions of people safe and prosperous." What kind of safety requires everyone to live in constant fear of their own government? Their blades lock in a contest of strength and will, energy crackling between the weapons as father and son struggle against each other both physically and philosophically. In this moment, Vader sees something in his son's eyes that stops him completely. A familiar expression of unwavering determination to fight for principles greater than personal comfort, even against impossible odds. "You would rather watch the galaxy burn in chaos than accept the order I've established? I'd rather see it choose its own destiny, even if that choice sometimes leads to mistakes and suffering." The words echo something Padme said years earlier. During one of their late-night arguments, something about the fundamental right to make errors being essential to genuine freedom. Vader steps back from their locked blades, his lightsaber lowering as a hairline crack appears in the philosophical foundation he's built his entire adult life upon. "You sound exactly like your mother when she was young and idealistic." "Good. Maybe that means there's still hope for understanding between us." That single word, hope, carries such conviction and certainty that Vader feels something long dormant stir within his chest. Not physically, since his organic body remains completely intact, but something deeper and more fundamental than mere biology, something he thought had died permanently in the lava flows of Mustafar. That night, alone in his private meditation chamber surrounded by Sith artifacts and Imperial symbols, he sits staring at a holographic recording from his wedding to Padme on Naboo. The image flickers and waves with age, but the joy captured there remains undimmed. He studies the young man in that recording, observes the hope and optimism radiating from every gesture, and for the first time in 20 years asks himself a question that terrifies him more than any enemy ever could. What if I was wrong about everything? The thought spreads through his consciousness like a slow-acting poison, challenging every certainty he's constructed his empire upon. He saved Padme's life. That fact remains unquestionable, the one success he can point to without reservation. But in the process of saving her, did he destroy everything that made her love him in the first place? Did he become exactly the kind of person she would have fought against in her younger, more idealistic days? He thinks of the children he killed, trying for the first time in decades to see them not as obstacles to galactic peace, but as individuals with their own hopes, dreams, and potential futures cut brutally short. He considers the rebels he's executed not as terrorists threatening order, but as people fighting desperately for principles they believed worth dying for. He remembers worlds he's conquered, not as strategic victories, but as civilizations forced to abandon their heritage and identity. The realization builds slowly and inexorably, like lava cooling into unbreakable stone. He hasn't been protecting the galaxy from chaos. He's been controlling it according to his own traumatized vision of what safety should look like. He hasn't been bringing peace. He's been enforcing silence through systematic intimidation and the constant threat of overwhelming violence. But understanding the magnitude of his errors and finding a way to correct them are entirely different challenges. How do you undo 20 years of systematic oppression? How do you restore hope to a galaxy that has learned to accept tyranny as the natural order? How do you teach people to be free when freedom has become a forgotten concept? These questions plague him during the weeks that follow, creating an internal struggle that manifests in subtle changes his family cannot help but notice. He becomes less certain in his pronouncements, more prone to long silences and distant stares. His legendary efficiency in dealing with imperial business begins to slip as he finds himself hesitating over decisions that would once have been automatic. Padme notices the change first, recognizing in her husband's troubled demeanor echoes of the young man who once agonized over every moral choice. "You're questioning everything, aren't you?" she asks one evening as they share a rare private dinner. "I'm questioning whether the path I chose was the right one," he admits, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm wondering if I've become everything I once swore to fight against." "What changed your mind?" "Our children. Seeing myself through their eyes, realizing that I've raised them to fear me rather than love me." He pauses, staring at his hands as if seeing them clearly for the first time. "These hands have killed so many people, Padme. Children, civilians, anyone who stood in the way of my vision of order. How do I live with that knowledge?" "You start by stopping," she says simply. "You use whatever time you have left to try to repair some of the damage you've caused. And if it's too late, if the galaxy has moved too far down this path to find its way back to the light, then you make the attempt anyway, because that's what good people do. They try to fix their mistakes, even when success seems impossible." The final confrontation that will determine the fate of galactic civilization arrives not through dramatic revelation or military crisis, but through the quiet accumulation of doubt and growing resistance within the imperial structure itself. Palpatine, ancient and cunning, has sensed the changing dynamics within the Skywalker family and decides to force the issue before it can spread to other imperial officials and military commanders. He summons Luke and Leia to his private audience chamber in the deepest levels of the Imperial Palace, ostensibly for a routine meeting about their future roles in government. But his true intention is far more sinister: to turn them against their increasingly unreliable father and claim them as his new apprentices, disciples who will carry on the Sith tradition without the inconvenient emotional attachments that have begun to compromise Vader's effectiveness. The Emperor's throne room has always been a temple to intimidation, designed to make visitors feel small and powerless in the face of absolute authority. Massive pillars stretch toward a ceiling lost in shadows, while the walls are adorned with Sith artifacts and Imperial symbols that seem to watch with malevolent eyes. The throne itself rises from the center of the chamber like an altar to tyranny, surrounded by crackling energy fields and guarded by the most elite members of the Imperial Guard. "Your father grows weak and sentimental," Palpatine tells the twins as they stand before his throne, his yellow eyes gleaming with malevolent satisfaction. "His attachment to your mother and his concern for your opinions make him unsuitable for the harsh realities of galactic governance. But you two, you possess the potential to surpass him completely. You could bring true order to this galaxy instead of his increasingly compromised version." The familiar temptation hangs in the recycled air like incense, rich with promises of power and the ability to reshape reality according to their desires. But Luke and Leia have learned from their parents' tragic mistakes and the hidden history their mothers shared with them during countless private conversations. "We don't want to rule anyone," Leia states firmly, her voice carrying the natural authority she inherited from both sides of her remarkable family. "We want people to be free, to govern themselves according to their own values and cultural traditions. Freedom is simply organized chaos wearing a prettier mask." Palpatine responds with the weary patience of someone who has had this philosophical debate across countless centuries. "Look at what democratic self-determination brought the Republic. Systemic corruption, devastating warfare, and near-total civilizational collapse. Only through strong central authority can true peace be maintained. The Republic fell because people like you manipulated and corrupted it from within. Luke counters with growing confidence, his mother's political education finally bearing fruit. Freedom didn't destroy the Republic. The Sith did through systematic deception, manufactured crises, and the deliberate cultivation of fear and division. The Emperor's expression darkens like a storm front moving across a clear sky as he realizes these potential apprentices will not be as easily swayed as their father was 2 decades earlier. They possess something Anakin lacked during his moment of crisis: knowledge of alternatives, understanding of history, and most importantly, the support of people who love them without conditions or hidden agendas. If you will not serve willingly, Palpatine says with cold finality, then you will serve as examples to others who might question the natural order. Force lightning begins to crackle between his fingertips as he prepares to eliminate these disappointing assets. But before he can unleash the deadly energy, another lightsaber ignites in the chamber's shadowed doorway. The snap hiss of the weapon echoes through the vast space like a challenge to the very foundations of the Empire. Vader enters with his weapon ready, his choice finally and irrevocably made after decades of internal struggle and mounting doubt. The yellow tinge has begun to fade from his eyes, replaced by something that might be the beginning of clarity. "Let them go, Master." Palpatine turns with genuine surprise and rapidly growing fury etched across his ancient features. In all their years together, his apprentice has never directly defied him, never chosen family loyalty over Sith philosophy. This represents more than simple disobedience. It threatens the fundamental structure of everything they've built together. You would betray me, my most trusted apprentice? After everything I've given you, all the knowledge I've shared, all the power I've helped you achieve, you gave me the tools to impose my will upon others. Vader replies, stepping protectively between the Emperor and his children. But I already possessed everything I truly needed, a family worth protecting and principles worth fighting for, even if I'd forgotten them for a while. Sentiment makes you weak, young Skywalker. Love is a chain that binds you to failure and disappointment. I offered you the galaxy, and you chose to limit yourself to one small family. That small family is worth more than all the power you could ever offer. Vader replies, his voice steady with newfound conviction. I spent 20 years trying to protect them by controlling everything around them, but I only succeeded in becoming the very thing they needed protection from. The battle that follows differs dramatically from the throne room confrontation of another timeline, where a broken cyborg fought desperately to save his son from corruption. This is a contest between two complete beings, both operating at the peak of their abilities, both driven by competing visions of what the galaxy should become. Vader moves with the organic grace and flexibility that made him legendary during the Clone Wars, his unmarked body providing advantages that mechanical prosthetics could never duplicate. Every strike flows seamlessly into the next, every defensive maneuver calculated with the precision that comes from decades of experience. But more importantly than his physical capabilities, he fights with a clarity of purpose he hasn't possessed since his fall, not for power or personal dominion, but for love, redemption, and the chance to leave his children something better than a legacy of fear. Palpatine, ancient beyond measure and steeped in the dark side's corruption, unleashes the full fury of his accumulated power. Force lightning erupts from his fingertips in torrents that would have instantly killed a lesser being, while telekinetic attacks hurl massive pieces of the throne room's architecture like projectiles. The Emperor has spent millennia perfecting these techniques, and his mastery of Sith sorcery represents knowledge gathered across countless lifetimes. But for all his power and experience, Palpatine faces something he has never encountered before in his long existence: a Sith Lord choosing to reject the dark side not out of weakness or defeat, but from strength and understanding. Vader absorbs each lightning attack and redirects it back with increasing skill, his connection to the Force shifting and changing as he fights not just for victory, but for transformation. "You cannot defeat me, apprentice," Palpatine snarls as their battle rages across the vast chamber. "I am eternal. I am the darkness that lives in every heart. Even if you destroy this body, I will find another, and another after that. The Sith will endure long after your pathetic gesture is forgotten. Then I'll make sure there are no more Sith for you to inhabit," Vader responds, his strategy becoming clear as he presses his attack. "The rule of two ends here, with us. No more masters, no more apprentices, no more cycles of hatred and revenge." When the Emperor attempts to corrupt Luke and Leia through direct application of Sith sorcery, seeking to turn them into weapons against their father, Vader's protective instincts override every other consideration. The love he feels for his children, suppressed and twisted for so many years, finally breaks free of the dark side's constraints. It flows through him like a river of light, burning away the accumulated darkness of 2 decades and revealing the Jedi he was always meant to become. The transformation is visible to everyone in the chamber. The yellow tinge fades from Vader's eyes, replaced by the blue clarity his family remembers from his younger days. His movements become less aggressive, more defensive, as he positions himself not as a conquering warrior, but as a guardian protecting those he loves from harm. "Impossible," Palpatine whispers, his confidence shaken for the first time in centuries. "You cannot simply choose to reject the dark side. It is part of you now, woven into your very essence. You have killed too many, destroyed too much. There is no redemption for someone like you." "Maybe not," Vader admits, his voice carrying a peace that surprises even him. "Maybe I can never undo the damage I've caused or bring back the people I've killed. But I can make sure it stops here, with me. I can give my children the choice I never had, the freedom to be better than their father." The final phase of their confrontation becomes less a battle between enemies than a struggle between competing philosophies. Palpatine represents the Sith way: power through passion, strength through pain, order through domination. He has spent millennia perfecting these principles, building an empire that spans the galaxy and will supposedly endure for generations. Vader, transformed by love and motivated by hope, embodies something different: the possibility of redemption, the power of choice, the strength that comes from protecting others rather than controlling them. His fighting style shifts to pure defense, every move designed not to destroy his opponent, but to shield his children from corruption. The end comes not through lightsaber combat or Force lightning, but through a choice that neither combatant expected. As Palpatine prepares to unleash a final devastating attack that would kill everyone in the chamber, Vader makes a decision that defines the rest of galactic history. Instead of trying to defeat the Emperor through superior strength or skill, he does something far more dangerous. He opens himself completely to the Force, both light and dark, and allows it to flow through him without resistance or control. The result is catastrophic for both Sith Lords. The dark side energy that has sustained Palpatine for centuries suddenly finds itself in direct contact with the light, creating a reaction that tears at the very fabric of reality within the throne room. Vader, serving as a conduit for forces beyond mortal comprehension, bears the brunt of the feedback as his body is consumed by energies no organic form can withstand. As both Emperor and Enforcer fall, their deaths marked by an explosion of light that can be seen across Coruscant. Luke and Leia rush to their father's side. The yellow corruption has completely faded from his eyes, replaced by the blue they remember from childhood stories and old holographic recordings. "I'm sorry," Vader whispers with his final breaths. his unmarked face peaceful despite the pain consuming his body. I forgot who I was supposed to be for far too long. Take care of your mother and help the galaxy remember what freedom feels like. You remembered in the end, Luke says, tears streaming down his face as he holds his dying father's hand. That's what matters now. Help them choose better than I did. Vader continues, his voice growing weaker with each word. Give them alternatives I never had. Let them build something worth preserving, instead of something that needs to be endured. As Anakin Skywalker dies in his children's arms, his final thoughts are not of regret for the path he chose, but of hope for the future they will create. The man who once fell to darkness in an attempt to save those he loved has finally found redemption through the same motivation, not by conquering death, but by accepting it as the price of transformation. The news of the Emperor's death spreads across the galaxy within hours, transmitted by Imperial communication networks that suddenly find themselves without central authority. On countless worlds, Imperial governors and military commanders face the same choice. Attempt to maintain control through force alone, or allow the systems they govern to determine their own destiny. The response varies dramatically depending on local conditions and individual personalities. Some sectors descend into chaos as competing factions struggle for power in the vacuum left by Palpatine's demise. Others transition peacefully to local governance, their populations eager to experiment with freedoms they barely remember. A few Imperial hardliners attempt to establish successor regimes, but without the unifying presence of the Emperor and his enforcer, these efforts quickly fragment into regional conflicts. Padme, supported by Luke and Leia, works tirelessly to establish a transitional authority that can coordinate relief efforts and facilitate peaceful transfers of power. Her experience in the Senate and her reputation as someone who opposed the Empire from within make her a natural leader for those seeking alternatives to authoritarian rule. The challenge isn't defeating the Empire, she explains during one of many emergency sessions with representatives from across the galaxy. The Empire is already defeated. Our challenge is helping billions of people remember how to govern themselves after 20 years of having every decision made for them. The task proves more complex than anyone anticipated. Entire generations have grown up knowing only imperial rule, their understanding of democracy limited to historical records and suppressed cultural memories. Many systems lack the infrastructure for democratic governance, their traditional institutions destroyed or corrupted during the Empire's rise to power. Luke and Leia find themselves at the center of these reconstruction efforts, their unique position as Vader's children providing them with credibility among both former Imperial loyalists and rebel sympathizers. But they face constant pressure to assume the kind of central authority their father once wielded, with many arguing that strong leadership is necessary during the transition period. People expect us to become emperors ourselves, Leia observes, during a private family meeting. They want us to make the hard choices so they don't have to take responsibility for the consequences. That's exactly what Father warned us about, Luke replies, studying reports from across the galaxy that paint a complex picture of emerging conflicts and struggling democracies. The temptation to believe that we know what's best for everyone else. Their mother nods approvingly, remembering her own struggles with similar temptations during her years in the Senate. Power has a way of convincing those who hold it that they're indispensable. Your father fell to that trap, and it nearly destroyed everything he claimed to be protecting. The twins develop a different approach, one that focuses on empowering local leaders rather than imposing solutions from Coruscant. They establish educational programs to teach democratic principles, provide technical assistance for organizing elections, and most importantly, resist the urge to intervene when newly democratic systems make choices they personally disagree with. This philosophy is tested when several systems choose to maintain modified versions of imperial governance, arguing that their populations prefer stability to uncertainty. Luke and Leia face enormous pressure to force these systems to democratize, but they remember their father's lesson about the importance of allowing people to choose their own destiny. If we force them to be free, we become just another version of what we overthrew, Luke explains to critics who accuse the transitional government of being too passive. Real freedom includes the right to make choices we think are wrong. The process is slow, messy, and often frustrating. Some systems transition smoothly to democratic governance, while others struggle with corruption, factionalism, and the legacy of authoritarian habits. A few collapse entirely, requiring humanitarian intervention to prevent mass suffering. But gradually, across the galaxy, something resembling a free society begins to emerge from the ashes of the Empire. On Tatooine, Obi-Wan Kenobi receives regular updates about these developments through carefully maintained communication networks. The old hermit, now in his 70s and bearing the accumulated wear of decades in the desert, finds himself cautiously optimistic for the first time since the fall of the Republic. Ben, Owen Lars says one evening as they watch Tatooine's twin suns set over the endless dunes. "Do you think it'll work this time? This new republic they're trying to build?" Obi-Wan considers the question carefully, drawing on a lifetime of experience with both the best and worst aspects of galactic governance. "It's different this time," he says finally. The words should be comforting, should represent a father's natural desire to protect his children from harm. Instead, they send a chill through her that has nothing to do with the asteroid's recycled atmosphere. This isn't the gentle Jedi Knight who once promised to love her until the stars burned out and went cold. This is something else entirely, something that wears her husband's face but speaks with a stranger's voice, filtered through alien priorities and transformed loyalties. Hours pass in tense silence before Emperor Palpatine arrives at the medical facility, flanked by a retinue of clone troopers and Imperial officials whose faces reflect the gravity of recent events. His yellow eyes gleam with satisfaction as he surveys the scene before him. His new apprentice intact and whole, the twins born safely without complications, and Padme alive to serve as both emotional anchor and potential weakness. Everything has proceeded according to his carefully laid designs, even better than his most optimistic projections had suggested. "Lord Vader," he says, rolling the new title off his tongue like honey mixed with poison. "I sense that your power has grown considerably since our last meeting." Anakin turns from where he has been standing protective guard over his family, and Palpatine feels a moment of genuine surprise at what he observes. The young man before him radiates dark side energy like a fusion furnace, but there's something else present, a completeness, an integration of power and purpose that mechanical augmentation could never have provided or enhanced. This is not the broken instrument he had initially planned to forge from Skywalker's anguish, but something far more dangerous and infinitely more valuable. "My master," Anakin replies, dropping to one knee in a genuflection that somehow manages to seem both respectful and threatening. "The Jedi are defeated. Obi-Wan lies broken on Mustafar, and my wife lives because I had the strength to save her. Your vision of the future has been made reality." "Rise, Lord Vader," Palpatine commands, his voice rich with approval and anticipation. "The galaxy awaits the establishment of our new order. Together, we shall bring lasting peace to the chaos that has consumed galactic civilization for far too long." Anakin stands with fluid grace, and in his yellow eyes, Palpatine sees not mere servitude, but the promise of true partnership. This apprentice will not be content to serve forever in the traditional Sith fashion. Eventually, he will seek to claim the Master's throne for himself, as the rule of two demands. But that potential conflict is a concern for some distant future. For now, there is immediate work to be done. an empire to consolidate, and enemies to eliminate. What is thy bidding, my master? First, we must complete what Order 66 began so effectively. Every Jedi who survived the initial purge must be located and eliminated without exception. No trace of their corrupt philosophy can be allowed to survive, and poison future generations with false hope. And this time, my young apprentice, you will hunt them down personally. The words send a thrill of dark anticipation coursing through Anakin's complete, undamaged nervous system. No restrictive breathing apparatus limits his endurance. No mechanical limbs slow his reflexes or reduce his tactical flexibility. He is the perfect weapon, honed by years of war and tempered in the fires of personal loss. The surviving Jedi scattered across the galaxy have no conception of what is coming for them. It will be done, my master. Every last one of them will pay for their failures. The purge that follows reshapes the very nature of galactic civilization, with swift and merciless efficiency that staggers even Palpatine's ancient expectations. Where the broken Vader of another timeline might have taken years or even decades to systematically hunt down the scattered survivors, this complete and undamaged version accomplishes the task in a matter of months. His speed, agility, and unrestricted connection to the Force make him effectively unstoppable, a perfect predator unleashed upon prey that cannot hope to match his capabilities. On Kashyyyk, deep in the dangerous Shadowlands where few dare to venture, Master Luminara Unduli has established what she believes to be a secure sanctuary. The former temple instructor teaches a small group of younglings who miraculously escaped the massacre, using the planet's hostile wildlife and carnivorous plant life as natural defenses against Imperial forces. The Shadowlands have claimed countless lives over the millennia. Surely they will provide adequate protection against even the most determined pursuit. She has underestimated her hunter completely. Vader moves through the deadly undergrowth like a force of nature, his organic senses perfectly attuned to every subtle shift in the living force that permeates the dangerous ecosystem. The massive predators that should attack any intruder instead flee before his approach, their primitive minds recognizing a threat far more lethal than anything their evolution has prepared them to face. Even the carnivorous plants seem to recoil from his presence, as if the dark side energy surrounding him has poisoned the very air. He finds the hidden compound just as Luminara finishes sharing the evening meal with her young charges, their innocent laughter echoing through the twilight like a funeral bell. "You were my instructor once," he says as he steps into the clearing, his crimson lightsaber igniting with that familiar snap hiss that has become the sound of Jedi extinction. "You taught me lightsaber techniques when I was just a Padawan learning the most basic forms. Do you remember those lessons, Master Unduli?" Luminara rises slowly from her place at the simple table, her own weapon sliding into her palm with the smooth efficiency of decades of practice. Around her, the younglings huddle together in terror, their wide eyes reflecting the hellish red glow of the Sith blade that promises their doom. She recognizes the face despite its transformation, and that recognition is somehow worse than if he had been a complete stranger. "I remember a bright, eager boy who wanted to help everyone in the galaxy," she says quietly, her voice steady despite the fear that threatens to overwhelm her. "I remember someone who once asked me why the Jedi couldn't simply free all the slaves in every system. What happened to that compassionate child, Anakin Skywalker? That child learned that good intentions are meaningless without the power to enforce them," he replies, beginning to circle her with the patient confidence of a predator that knows its prey cannot escape. He discovered that the Jedi way leads only to death and suffering for the truly innocent. He chose to embrace effectiveness over empty philosophy. And what has that choice cost you? What have you gained that was worth abandoning everything you once believed? The question hangs in the superheated air between them, heavy with implications that neither wants to examine too closely. For just a moment, Vader's relentless advance falters as unbidden memories surface from the depths he has tried to bury. His mother's gentle smile, Padmé's musical laughter, the feeling of Naboo sunlight on his face during happier times. But the dark side reasserts its control quickly, drowning sentiment in the cold clarity of purpose. It cost me nothing I wasn't willing to sacrifice for a greater good. They fight among the deadly flora of Kashyyyk's shadowlands, their lightsabers, casting impossible shadows through the twisted branches and hanging vines. Luminara's technique is nearly flawless, her Form 3 mastery representing decades of study and refinement, but against an opponent with no physical limitations or mechanical restrictions, her defensive expertise proves tragically insufficient. Vader's attacks come from angles that should be impossible, his organic flexibility allowing combinations and sequences that cybernetic joints could never duplicate. The end comes with brutal swiftness. A feint toward her left side draws her guard, fractionally out of position, and Vader's blade finds her heart with surgical precision. As she falls among the alien flowers, the younglings cry out in anguish and despair, but their emotional pain only feeds his growing power through the dark side's cruel alchemy. He deactivates his weapon and turns toward the children, seeing not innocence worthy of protection, but future seeds of rebellion that must be eliminated before they can take root. "You need not suffer," he tells them, his voice almost gentle in its terrible certainty. "Your pain will be brief, and you'll join your teacher in whatever lies beyond." On Felucia, in the planet's toxic swamps where the very air can kill an unprotected humanoid, Aayla Secura has formed an alliance with the native Felucians. She uses their intimate knowledge of the planet's unique and dangerous ecosystem to mask her force signature from Imperial sensor arrays, believing that the poisonous spores and aggressively territorial predators will provide natural protection from pursuit. The Twi'lek Jedi has forgotten that her hunter learned jungle warfare during the brutal campaigns of the Clone Wars. Vader considers her words as he approaches with measured steps, his boots making no sound on the spongy, organic ground cover. "I protected those who deserved protection. I eliminated those who posed a threat to order and lasting peace. The distinction has become clearer to me now than it ever was when we served the corrupt Republic together. And which category do I fall into? Someone who deserves your protection, or a threat that must be eliminated?" His lightsaber provides the only answer she needs as it ignites with its characteristic hiss. They duel among the giant fungi and bioluminescent growths, their weapons sending cascades of glowing spores spiraling into the humid atmosphere. Aayla fights with creativity and desperate innovation, using every aspect of the dangerous environment to her tactical advantage. But Vader systematically turns the very jungle against her. Telekinetic force sends carnivorous plants snapping toward her like organic missiles, while carefully directed gas clouds limit her movement and force her into increasingly disadvantageous positions. In the end, it's not his blade that claims her life, but Felucia itself. A gesture from his unmarked hand causes a massive fungal growth to rupture violently, releasing a concentrated cloud of toxins that would be harmless to someone equipped with proper breathing apparatus. But Aayla has only her natural respiratory system, and the poison completes its work with ruthless efficiency. "I regret the necessity," Vader says softly as she collapses among the alien vegetation, and for just a moment he almost means the words. But this is the only path to ensuring lasting peace for the galaxy. Master after master falls before his relentless and methodical pursuit, each death adding to his growing legend and confirming his belief in the righteousness of his mission. Ki-Adi-Mundi dies on Mygeeto, caught between competing corporate mining interests while trying to protect civilian workers from exploitation. Shaak-Ti meets her end on Kamino, discovered while secretly training a new generation of Force-sensitive clones who might have carried on Jedi traditions. Even the mighty Oppo Rancisis hidden deep within Coruscant's forgotten underworld levels, cannot escape the patient hunter who tracks him through the city's labyrinthine depths with inexorable determination. Each victory feeds Vader's growing power through the dark side while simultaneously confirming his philosophical transformation. The galaxy grows quieter and more orderly with each Jedi death, more stable, more peaceful in the way that graveyards are peaceful. Nascent resistance, movements that might have coalesced around surviving Force users wither and die without charismatic leadership. Star systems that might have rebelled against Imperial rule instead submit willingly, preferring the certainty of known tyranny to the remembered chaos of the Republic's final, war-torn years. But the most complex and emotionally challenging situation awaits Vader within the towering walls of the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, where his family has made their home at the very heart of the new galactic order. Padme has physically recovered from the twins' difficult birth, but the emotional toll of watching her husband's ongoing transformation weighs on her spirit like a physical burden. She sees him return from his hunting missions with blood on his hands and increasing darkness in his eyes, and she struggles desperately to reconcile this figure with the gentle young man who once brought her flowers from Naboo's royal gardens. "How many more, Anakin?" she asks one evening as he stands on their private balcony, gazing out over the endless cityscape that never truly sleeps. "How many more Jedi must die to satisfy your vision of peace?" He doesn't turn to face her, but she can see his reflection in the reinforced, transparent steel, unmarked by battle scars, unencumbered by mechanical prosthetics, but somehow more alien than if he had been transformed into a complete cyborg. The man she married seems to be disappearing more each day, replaced by something that wears his face but operates according to entirely foreign principles. "As many as it takes to ensure that our children never experience the chaos and suffering we lived through," he replies, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. "As many as necessary to guarantee that Luke and Leia inherit a galaxy where order and stability have triumphed over the anarchy that nearly destroyed civilization." This isn't order, Anakin. This is systematic oppression dressed up in noble language. There's a fundamental difference between the two, and you used to understand that distinction. Now he does turn, and she sees something flicker in those yellow-tinged eyes, not anger or irritation, but something that might be genuine hurt at her continued resistance to accepting their new reality. "You're alive, Padme. Our children are. Safe, healthy, and growing strong in their abilities. The galaxy has known true peace for the first time in decades, perhaps centuries. How can you possibly characterize that as oppression? Because peace that's built on fear and maintained through terror isn't genuine peace at all. It's just organized, systematic quietude. The silence of the oppressed, not the contentment of the truly free." Her words strike deeper than she intended, and for a moment she sees a crack appear in his carefully constructed Sith composure. The man she married is still present somewhere beneath the layers of darkness and rationalization, still capable of being reached if she can find the right combination of words and emotional appeals. It gives her hope that he might yet be saved from the path he has chosen. "The Republic offered people freedom and democratic self-determination," he says, his voice softer now, almost pleading for her understanding. "And what did the citizens do with those precious gifts? They allowed systematic corruption to flourish in every branch of government, permitted a Sith Lord to rise to the highest position of power under their very noses, and started a galactic war that nearly obliterated everything our ancestors built. At least now there's genuine stability, real security for our family. Stability that exists only as long as you personally maintain it through force. What happens when you're gone, Anakin? What occurs when Luke and Leia inherit this empire you're building? Will they possess the strength to maintain it through violence, or will they have the wisdom to transform it into something better?" The question pierces straight to the heart of his deepest, most carefully buried fears, and he cannot formulate an adequate response. What if his entire approach is fundamentally flawed? What if the peace he has imposed through superior firepower and the systematic elimination of opposition is nothing more than a temporary condition that will collapse the moment his iron grip loosens? What if his children examine his legacy and see only ashes and regret? Such thoughts are dangerous territory for someone who has committed himself so completely to the dark side, and he forces them away before they can take root and grow into genuine doubt. "They'll be strong because I'll ensure they're properly trained," he says with finality. "I'll make certain they understand what's required to maintain order and protect the innocent." The statement is simultaneously a promise and a threat, and Padme feels a deep chill that has nothing to do with the palace's climate control systems. She draws Luke and Leia closer as they sleep in their shared nursery. Twins who reach for their father with innocent joy, blissfully unaware that their very existence has become both emotional anchor and philosophical burden for the man who saved their lives. Years pass with the terrible efficiency of a well-tuned machine, and the Galactic Empire consolidates its power with a speed that surprises even its architects. The presence of a Sith Lord, operating without physical limitations or mechanical restrictions, accelerates every aspect of Imperial expansion and control. Vader becomes a legend throughout the known galaxy, but not as the mechanical monster of whispered rumors and fearful speculation. Instead, he represents something far worse, a perfect predator who strikes without warning and shows no mercy to those who dare threaten the New Order. On Ryloth, he dismantles Cham Syndulla's entire resistance network in a single night of systematic destruction. The legendary Twi'lek freedom fighter, hero of countless battles against separatist oppression, never sees death approaching. There's no telltale sound of mechanical breathing to provide warning, no obvious cybernetic limitations to exploit in combat. Instead, there's only silence followed by darkness as Vader's lightsaber finds its mark with surgical precision. Where is Syndulla hiding his main base of operations? He demands of a captured rebel operative, his unmarked face showing no emotion, as he lifts the prisoner with casual telekinetic force. "We'll never tell you anything, Skywalker," the rebel gasps defiantly, using his former name like a curse designed to wound. "The people of Ryloth will never submit to Imperial tyranny." But Vader feels no emotional reaction to the old identity. Anakin Skywalker died on Mustafar in every way that truly matters, consumed in the volcanic fires of that hellish world and reborn as something infinitely more effective. What stands in his place has moved beyond such sentimental attachments. "You will provide the information I require," he states with quiet certainty that brooks no argument. "The only variable remaining is how much physical discomfort you'll choose to endure before compliance becomes inevitable." The interrogation proceeds. With clinical efficiency, each enhanced technique drawn from ancient Sith holocrons and modern Imperial intelligence manuals. By the time Luke and Leia reach their 10th birthday, the galaxy has settled into an unprecedented period of stability under absolute Imperial rule. But it's the peace of the cemetery, purchased with the blood of anyone who dared to dream of freedom or remember what came before. The twins grow up within the towering walls of the Imperial Palace, raised by their conflicted mother and systematically trained by their father in the practical applications of power and control. "Remember this above all else, my children," Vader instructs them during one of their daily lessons in the palace's private training facility. "Personal strength is the only thing that truly matters in this universe. The strong survive and can protect those they choose to value. The weak inevitably perish and drag innocent people down with them into destruction." The training room itself serves as a testament to Imperial engineering capabilities, vast, sterile, and equipped with every conceivable tool for developing force abilities and combat skills to their maximum potential. Luke moves through traditional lightsaber forms with the natural grace of his bloodline, while Leia demonstrates telekinetic precision that would impress a Jedi Master at the height of the Order's power. They are unquestionably their fathers, children in every way that matters for the future he envisions.